Okay, hello everybody. My name is Michael Ludden. I run marketing for Samsung Developers, which is Samsung's developer outreach program. I cobbled together a little deck here to do a bit of a program overview, and then I'd like to take advantage of the kind of informal format, or at least the idea of a developer university, and bring the director of our group up, and we'll take some Q&A here at the end. But I wanted to start with just a quick introduction of what Samsung Developers is, why you may not have heard about it, and kind of what we're planning to do in 2013. So to start off, about 6 months ago, we started an initiative where we kind of got rid of all of the different names that we had been using to that point, rebrand for simplicity, become a friendly face of Samsung for the world of developers, because traditionally Samsung has been thought of mainly as a hardware maker, an ODM and OEM. People haven't really thought of us when they've thought of software or anything like that. And so it's our job to change that. So part of the way that we're doing that is we're here. Number one, we're at events all over the United States and actually worldwide. We're doing everything from large conferences to small meetups locally. We have a couple of Bay Area meetups that we sponsor. And not only that, but all over the country. And we also have hackathons and other medium-level events that we do. Enthusiast events, Android events, things like that. We do a lot of contests. We're big in social media now, so our Twitter account is @SamsungDevUS. I'm actually planning on giving everybody here a Samsung Galaxy S3 case. Hod, I should have brought one up here. Can you hold up that case really quickly? So we had a custom case made for CES. We did the AT&T Developer Summit before CES. We did the CES Hackathon yesterday at the Venetian. And we gave away several of those, but we have some leftovers, so I think we can get you all covered with a nice Samsung Galaxy S3 custom case. So don't forget that before you leave. We'd love it if you tweet at us as well, @SamsungDevUS. And then we want to do real community outreach. So the types of events we do try to be high-quality engagement, not just splashing our name up on a beer or something at an after-party at CES, but coming and speaking to people at Developer University, or actually doing a hackathon, or things where we can actually talk to people about what we offer, why they should work with us, how we can help them most importantly. Oh, there we go. There's the cheesy pictures. So in the last 6 months, this is actually, I made this slide a month ago, so it's a bit updated. We've done 25+ events around the Americas in 15+ cities. We've had over 20 different partners, and we've engaged with over 20,000 different developers just in the last 6 months. A few examples of that. Samsung Developers Office Hours. Actually, before I go into detail on that, I will just, if you could bring the sound up, I'm going to play that video. We've been doing several of these. We're doing one in Toronto next month. We did one in New York towards the end of December. And the first one we did was in San Francisco, and this is a little recap video of that. Samsung Office Hours is an opportunity for us to open up our arms and say, please come into the Samsung universe. We want to help you be successful. We wanted to show we're here to help the community and engage with the community in a real and tangible way.
The collaboration and synergy that Samsung provides for game developers is amazing. Here in this great space at YetiZen, we're able to communicate with the CMO of Google Play, Adobe, and Ludden.
For us, it's always a good opportunity to be with developers and to kind of sound them out and find out, what kind of cool things they're working on. Developers are the lifeblood of the ecosystem. They're what makes the ecosystem happen.
Adobe is really happy to take part in Samsung Office Hours. It's a great opportunity for us to get in front of the community and just to help people to bring really successful games and applications.
I have learned a lot. I could never think I could spend my Saturday better than this.
I find today to be really amazing. Today I really made a lot of connections, not just with the presenters, but with a lot of the local developers as well.
We brought an engineer from Samsung who can help with general Android questions. There's somebody from Immersion if you want to do haptics. We have this cool robotic ball that has an SDK that they're looking for games for and they want to offer to people.
Samsung Office Hours are awesome because it's so hard to find one-on-one FaceTime with Samsung developers, and it's so awesome because, you know, they're right there.
Oh, there's so much more impact when you get to talk to another person. Online, you're bombarded with advertisements. You know, like you don't know what to use or who to trust. You're always being told what to do. But when you actually talk to someone face to face, those couple of questions they have that you can answer, or just the information exchange that you have with each other, I think it's just far more effective.
So this is a collaboration between large companies who want to offer support and small developer shops who want support, and we want it to create kind of like that third place between home and work, almost like a workspace, but with many more important players present in case developers have questions.
We just want to see more of this. Bring in the vendors and they get a chance to give a 20-minute pitch is a great win-win for both sides, and I think Samsung could do this kind of thing, showcase their vision of the future. That's what we look for here.
I was on the other side of the table where I was taking questions, and it was a learning experience for me, and I was very happy to share my knowledge with them. This is our first event. We're going to have lots of them, and I want developers to come and talk to engineers and clarify their questions. It's free, so just come, code, and enjoy and talk to us.
Okay, wasn't that exciting? So that gives you a sense of what... Oh, there we go. That's the one I was on. What Samsung Developers Office Hours is all about. It's not really a conference. It's not a hackathon. It's not a pitch fest. It's not something where we go up to developers and say, hey, you need to use Samsung enabler technologies or Samsung SDKs. It's more of just, hey, here's some help. That particular one was gaming themed. It was all day. It was Saturday. We brought in several partners and had a little mini show floor section on the side, and we brought in a lot of speakers. Next one we did in New York was a 3-hour, or actually a 4-hour one in the evening on a weekday. So it was much more workshop style. We brought in one of the best Android teachers around, Mark Murphy. I don't know if anybody here knows there. Or does anybody know about Americana? Really? Well, you should check it out. They're one of the best developer education programs. They have books. They have classes all over the country, along with Developer University by CEA. So Mark Murphy's a fantastic teacher. We got UTest, which is a testing service, a cloud testing service, and Soasta, which is an automated testing service to come give actual coding workshops to developers in the room. The next one we're doing in Toronto focuses on sort of cross-platform technologies. That's going to be a lot of fun. So if you're in Toronto, that's going to be February 5th. But we wanted to make it a little different than other events that other people are doing, more altruistic, more about just offering help and not pitching people on what we do. We were at Big Android Barbecue, which is sort of a niche enthusiast event. Has anybody here heard of Big Android Barbecue? Hod's the only one who's heard about any of these, our director. No one's heard about Big Android Barbecue? Big Android Barbecue is, I mean, it's not a barbecue, but it's a big Android enthusiast event in Texas. You should check that out as well if you're an Android enthusiast. But we thought it was important to engage with that community because they're the newsmakers, really. A lot of enthusiast blogs and tech blogs have a lot of Android fans on it, and they get very upset when Samsung doesn't do something right, like we don't release the source code to Exynos, our processors, and so they make a big stink. And so we thought it was very important, even as a developer program, to reach out to them because they consider themselves developers, and to a certain extent they are, even though they're doing more ROM cooking and kind of platform development level stuff. And making use of the GPL to do open source coding stuff, which is a little outside of the scope of application developers. But to a certain extent, it bleeds down. Application developers talk to these people. These people are application developers. They're newsmakers. So that's an enthusiast event that we went big at. We held a panel about exactly the issue I brought up just now, the Exynos source code issue, which was solved soon after that. You may have never heard of it, actually. It went away very quickly. Sprint Open Solutions Conference. We sponsor the hackathon and the conference, so we do things with carrier partners as well, just to give you a sense of the range of events that we do. So why Samsung developers? What do we actually offer? S-Suggest, if you have a Samsung device, you probably have S-Suggest on it. You could check right now. It's an app recommendation engine. It's pre-installed on pretty much every Samsung device that's out there, especially in the US. And you can click that application. It will suggest applications to you. And then when you click the application to download, it'll take you to either Google Play or to Samsung Apps if it's available on your device, which is Samsung's App Store, or a local carrier store. It essentially includes deep links into these different places, and it's a way for developers to get attention for their app. And when it's pre-installed on most Samsung devices, and you're an Android developer, that's a pretty powerful thing. So Samsung Apps is Samsung's app store. It's designed to the way we pitch it in the United States, because it's not available on every device in the US, is it's a way to expand your reach. Google Play is not available everywhere, but Samsung Apps is available in a lot of places where Google Play is not available. Other carrier stores and other third-party stores are not available. Informal co-marketing opportunities. I'll talk about this more in a second, but actually I think I have slides on each one of these. But so let me go through them. Nope, I don't. So informal co-marketing opportunities. This is where we select a partner. We work with a partner who's doing something like using the S Pen SDK, which is an SDK that lets you take advantage of this little guy right here, the stylus, which has cool stuff like hover, pressure sensitivity, and the SDK even includes things like multi-window, where you can actually have an app that only takes up about half of your window, and you can add functionality like drag and drop, kind of copy and paste between windows. That's all part of the S Pen SDK. If we have a developer that takes advantage of that, we can say to them, hey, why don't you come up and present with us at one of these talks? Why don't we try to get you featured in SSuggest? Basically, we try to help them in any way that we can. And then Virtual Device Lab for remote testing, that's on developer.samsung.com. It's basically a way that you can test your device without actually having a physical device in your hand. We have a traditional device loaner program. Developers usually don't like to use the Android emulator, if at all possible, because it's very slow and it doesn't always emulate correctly. So we do have a device loaner program. We do a lot of contests and, again, events. So, again, you can follow us on Twitter and tweet something at us, please do. We're on YouTube as well. You can watch that video I just showed you over and over if you so choose. You would be the first. Facebook and Google+, we're looking into doing Hangouts with how-tos on whatnot. This is a bit of an old event list. It includes some stuff that's already passed, but we will be in Toronto February 5th. That's no longer to be determined. We'll be at the Game Developers Conference at TechCrunch Disrupt in New York, a whole host of events coming up. And then we're going to do a developer conference, hopefully in Hawaii, towards the end of summer this year. So mark that on your calendar. Really quickly, I wanted to talk about, sorry, I'll go back a second now. People are taking pictures of things. There's not really any concrete details, just a nice picture of Hawaii, so it's okay. So the S Pen, went over that briefly. So we talked about hover. I put these in here to describe our enabler technologies. So we have a few things that we add to the Android experience on our devices. One of them is All Share, which lets you wirelessly share from your device to your Samsung television, and do cool things like dual screen that you can't do with regular Android, but you can do between two Samsung devices, your phone and your Samsung television. The other is the S Pen SDK, which I described already. We're going big on that because it includes, like I said, more than just pen stuff. The stylus isn't just a capacitive stylus. It has more things that it can do, and we've enabled a lot of that at the OS level already as kind of examples of what developers could potentially do. So tooltips are one thing. If you hover over the screen without touching it, you can get tooltips in a lot of the different areas. It'll give you details about what that menu item is, kind of like when you hover over with a mouse. This screenshot shows it hovering over the gallery and showing an enhanced view of what might be in that gallery. Multi-window, like I just described, this is kind of a visualization of dragging and dropping between two applications that are open at the same time. Another thing you can't do without the S Pen SDK. Multi-window for S Pen, yeah, there's more examples of that. These are app examples. Pictorio, you can download it from Google Play. It's a cool application that lets you basically make animated GIFs and share them very quickly. This is an example of a company that we talked to about the S Pen SDK. I had coffee with them, and they said, yeah, we'll do that, because they were lead designing on Android. It took them 2 days, and then it's the same application. You can download it right now. If you have a Samsung Galaxy Note or Note 2 or Note 10.1, I see you got that one there, congratulations. It will actually do some cool hover functionality and pen functionality on it. So it's an example of the S Pen SDK being used as a value-added feature on Samsung devices, which lets us then feature them and talk about them and bring them to talks when it makes sense. But then if you don't have a Samsung device, the application doesn't break or anything. It still works just fine. It just doesn't use the S Pen. Another example of an app is Coach's Eyes. This is used to have more fine motor control on detailing, what somebody's doing right or wrong when they're doing a move in sports. You can take a picture and notate it with the S Pen. Before I bring Hod up for Q&A, does anybody have any quick questions about sort of what enabler technologies Samsung developers have I made that clear, like why we want people to use these technologies? Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to bring Hod up. Hod is the director of our group and also our lead technical evangelist. So we can get as nitty-gritty as you'd like, but we've got probably 10 minutes for Q&A, so you guys can ask us anything you want. I want to make sure that we get across what our program is, why we exist, and how we can actually help developers. Yes, sir.
Hi. Three really quick questions. Well, maybe not so quick on the answers. One, are you going to release more as API? For example, the IR blaster is one example of something we would like to be able to program to, and most of us have kind of figured out how to do it, but it's not documented any place, so it makes our lives very miserable. And I hate to tell you this, Peel sucks, so we'd like to do our own TV control applications. Two, the Android universe is pretty fragmented.
So we can answer
if you wish.
Yeah, so just really quickly, he was talking about the IR blaster. There's actually a really cool IR blaster on the Note 10.1 device.
So one example of coming out with SDKs is we actually just came out with the All-Share thing that actually lets you go into the All-Share framework. So the All-Share framework has been out for a little while. And so we are very interested in trying to give access to things that help programmers do stuff. So actually that's something where feedback to us is a really good thing because we can kind of take that back and really talk about where people are coming to us and saying we need help with this. So that's great information actually.
The other question is kind of, the Android universe is pretty fragmented. I actually argue it's not as fragmented as people think it is, but that seems to be perception. But when you come to when you come to Samsung, it really is kind of more fragmented than it needs to be. So for example, ignoring the obvious stuff, like some things don't have certain features, that's normal. You don't get a consistency even in the API and things like All-Share. My father, for example, has an SH100 camera, which is supposed to be able to use Android devices and telephones to be, for example, a remote television, a remote viewfinder. Doesn't work worth anything. It'd be nice if Samsung would kind of regularize and normalize out all these things so they'd work consistently, so we wouldn't have to keep trying to figure out what will work with what and what won't work with something else.
That's great feedback. I would say that S Pen and All-Share, the two most recent SDKs that we've released, are kind of an example of that actually happening. So for the most part, you can take just about, except for multi-window, you can take the same S Pen SDK and apply it, and it will work the same on the original Note, the Note 2, and the Note 10.1. Now, some of that stuff, like the multi-window, which requires more horsepower, is a little different on Note 2 and Note 10.1 than it is on the original Note. But yeah, I think that's good feedback. They're aware of it, and there are changes being made to make one SDK across all devices. Of course, there are challenges, right, with the version of Android that the device is capable of, how old the device is, and also there's also different distributions across different carriers. But I think the fact that there are so many different versions of the Note 2, for example, and the S Pen SDK interacts with them all fairly the same, is evidence of progress anyway. And then what was your third question?
Kind of inadvertently walked me into it because I was actually going to avoid it, and that's, yeah, there are so many versions of, and we're left kind of wondering why. So for example, this baby, there are 5 different versions of it, different regions of the world. They don't work with each other, and for example, we don't, the 8013 model, we're still waiting for Jelly Bean. You guys promised us that before the end of the year.
So when you say they don't work with each other, what do you mean?
We can't, for example, there's 3G on some, there's Wi-Fi on others, certain features are on some of them, certain features are not on them, depending what part of the world they're from and what features they have. It makes it very confusing and very difficult for us to sort of make it consistent.
So I guess the question would be, why don't we have one SKU worldwide? Well, I mean, I think you answered your own question, right? There's different 3G and 4G radios and frequencies depending on the carrier around the world, depending on the model of sales and whatnot. So, I mean, that's you kind of answered your own question. That's a great ideal, and it'd be great to just have one device with every single radio in the world packed into it, and either enabled or disabled based on your desire, but we're not quite there yet. Those are great questions. Anybody else have questions about anything? If not, we can just give out some, Samsung developers cases and call it a day. Okay, all right. Thanks a lot, guys.